Well, hello guys, and welcome back to another Rick and Morty review. It's Season 2 time! Well, okay, technically we're about to start Season 3. Well, kind of. Well, we kind of already have. But let's talk about Season 2. Season 2 is interesting because Season 1 has a bunch of, laugh out loud comedy. It's constantly putting out jokes, constantly making you just, laugh out loud. Season 2, on the other hand, while it's still really funny, it's not laugh out loud. The humor is a lot more subtle. It's a lot more interesting. It's more complex. It's still really good. It's just very different. And that's not a bad thing at all. It works really well within the show. But let's just get to the premiere, A Rickle in Time. So it starts off, time has been, at the end of season 1, they froze time, right, to clean up the house. It's been about 6 months, and now they have to unfreeze time. So they're cleaning everything up, putting everything back in order for when they reset time. There's this one guy who's been falling off of his roof for 6 months, and they were supposed to put a mattress under him, but they forgot to. But yeah, Rick starts up time again. The parents walk in and get ready to yell at them, and nope, everything's perfectly fine, even though they did put Jerry's shirt back on backwards. But it's like, oh, here, have $500 and unmarked bills and go get yourself some ice cream. And don't touch any of us, or because they'll explode, right? It's a good start, right? And we get our intro, and the intro is a little different. We have some new clips that we haven't seen before, which some show up in the episodes, some don't. Only time will tell. Right? But, so eventually, after the credits, we see them interacting right there in the kitchen, complaining about who should have put the mattress under the guy. And eventually, we see this whole thing where, a blued out version of Summer pushes Morty, and, there's other versions of them separate, and they fracture the timeline. This is such a cool concept, and it's so well done. How it works is that basically for a good chunk of this episode, they had to animate every scene multiple times because what's happening on the top half and what's happening on the bottom half is completely different. And the two times can interact with each other and also can't interact with each other. They talk about how, Morty can hear voices even though he's not talking, right? They're both they're in uncertainty. They both exist and don't exist at the same time. It's one of the most interesting uses of time travel, time-related travel I've seen. And it's just so well done. This is such a cool episode visually. Because they look outside and they find out their house is just floating surrounded by Schrodinger's cats. Which, last I checked, isn't... Okay, I know Schrodinger's cat is if it's in the box with poison and it both is alive and dead at the same time. And it's alive or dead until it's absorbed upon... But isn't Schrodinger's cat the whole point of it about quantum mechanics, about it's absorbed upon by either us or some other force? It just, right? And doesn't that mean that them absorbing each other is technically making them not Schrodinger's cats? I may be overcomplicating this a little too much. But eventually Rick he uses his time-stopping device to make it so that when he pushes the button, the two timelines will merge back together, but because Rick and Morty are uncertain, they can't merge back together. So Rick mathematically explains how both of them are pieces of shit. See, this is what I'm talking about. This joke is really funny, right? Mathematically explaining why they're pieces of shit using science. But I didn't laugh out loud, right? I didn't laugh at all, but I thought it was really funny. How does that constitute, right? Because I'm still thinking it's really funny, but I'm not actually laughing. I'm just like, yeah, that's really funny and that's really smart. Smart and fun. You're smart and funny too. Oh, South Park. But right, So after explaining this, Rick goes to press the button again. But now, even though Morty and Summer are in sync, he's not. So every time he presses the button, his other self isn't. So he's like, oh shit, he's trying to kill me. That son of a bitch is trying to kill me. So So basically he thinks that if one timeline kills the other, uncertainty will be restored. So he uses the time crystal to make a gun and starts trying to kill himself. It's these really cool time concepts. How they're both in different places and they're both trying to shoot each other. Right? It's an interesting idea. And eventually Rick gets so uncertain trying to kill himself that he splits the timeline again into 4 pieces. But Morty ends up knocking him out and they trap him in a cage until he calls himself and makes sure that yes, he is certain that everything is certain again. It's just all these concepts and they're really well done. And the episode does a good job at explaining everything. But eventually this giant testicle monster played by Key and Peele comes in. And he's a 4th dimensional time being. So he can absorb all times at the same time. Because even though they fucked up their own flimsy timeline, he's in all of them at the same time. He is always certain because he is infinite. Okay, it's really well done again. And he gives them these collars. And I like how they have the interaction, how they explain this by showing and not telling. Like this whole idea that he's both there and not there at the same time. Because 3 of the Ricks, Mortys, and Summers put on their collars, but one doesn't. And he's explaining, oh, put on your fucking collars. And they're like, we already did. Right? It's a well done visual reason of explaining this. And then they get back into certainty, right? Everything lines up again because of the collars. But then he's like, yeah, you stole that fucking crystal, so you're going to time prison. Okay. So, right, and he pulls out this gun it's like a worm or whatever, but Rick's like, fuck this, breaks the gun using some infinite probability ideals, right, like, oh, infinite potentials, you'll do everything, and he's like, I'm getting more uncertain, and they break the timeline up 28 times. Well, they say 32, but if you actually count it, I'm pretty sure that's 28. I could be wrong. It may actually be 32. But they break it up. They kill the testicle monster, kind of, because again, he's an immortal infinite monster. And they break the timeline again up into 64. Right? And Rick fixes the collars. He has to fix, what, like 90 of them? Probably even more than that. One version of Rick has to fix every other collar, right? He has to fix 3 collars 32 times, and then now 64 times. So all the collars end up working, except for 1/64th of Morty's collars that doesn't work, and Morty ends up falling into the Schrodinger's cat void. Rick goes and chases after him, and sacrifices his life to give... Rick gives Morty his collar. And he's like, oh, please, God, please let me... Or he accepts his death, and then he's like, nope, fuck this, I don't want to die. Gets Morty's collar, fixes it, and he's like, please, God, let me live. And he lives, and he's like, you know what's... And oh my God, it's so funny, right? Oh, yeah, and then I forgot to talk about something before we get into the ending here. There was a side plot. Beth and Jerry had a side plot. It's completely fucking pointless. It's my only problem with the episode, is that it means goddamn nothing. So what happens is they're driving back from Cold Stone Creamery. Jerry hits a deer. They take it to a hospital, find out it was shot by a hunter, and Beth goes to operate on the deer. Then the lawyer comes in and is like, the second you operate that deer, it's going to become venison or a piece on the wall or whatever, right? But then Jerry brings in these people from the Servine Institute to take the deer away into another state where his jurisdiction means nothing anymore. Beth has to admit she's a failure, But then Jerry reveals that the Servine Institute people were actually Cold Stone Creamery, and that Beth goes on to save the deer, because even though she had to admit she was a horrible surgeon, she ends up saving the deer. Again, it's fucking pointless. But in the end, everything goes back to normal, right? Jerry makes a bunch of jokes about how stupid their collars look, and Rick's like, it doesn't feel that good, doesn't? And yeah, that's the episode. And then there's the end credit scene in which we see the two testicle monsters traveling through time trying to find Rick. And eventually they run into Albert Einstein, or at least I'm pretty sure that's what they're going for. They kick his ass and don't fuck with time, so he decides to fuck with time anyways. E equals MC squared and all that garbage. And that's where it ends. This is a great episode. This is one of the best episodes in the show. And especially how it's done, how it's presented, all these visual styles, how much time it must have taken to animate all these scenes multiple times. It is so well done. I can't applaud this episode enough. It's in the top 3 of this show. It's so great. Definitely watch it. But with all this being said, I hope you all enjoyed. Stay tuned for more. Until next time,